before riding off to the Civil War. You may know it as the War of Rebellion, as our northern folks call it, was led by General Ulysses S. Grant, who was born right up the river in Point Pleasant, Ohio. What I'm known for is my wood carving and pottery work. I hope you noticed the communion table that was on the dais earlier today. Well, I carved it for my parents. In the late 19th and early 20th century, Cincinnati was considered the home of the most accomplished wood carvers in the United States. Thanks to the efforts of Henry Henry Fry, his son, William Henry Fry, and Ben Pittman. Among Mr. Fry's works were the organ screen at the Cincinnati Music Hall and the chest and sideboard made for then White House resident Luther Irving Hayes, also an Ohioan. Mr. Fry believed that women made much better wood carvers than men, and started giving private lessons to women in 1872. He said, quote, "The work of women has, to me, a far deeper significance than its intrinsic value. It is woman, the beginning of a new era, defining for them clearly and truly the doctrine of human rights." Unquote. My communion table was dedicated Easter Sunday in 1880. It is carved out of a solid piece of oak, the center panel with the chalice, and to the left and right of that chalice are full relief carvings dedicated to my parents. And on either side are panels of a Byzantine cross, also carved in relief. I also studied art under the great Frank Duvenet at the Art Academy of Cincinnati, and I became very active in the pottery movement. I was a treasurer of the Cincinnati Pottery Club from 1879 to 1890, and I showed my works at the World Columbia Exhibition in Chicago in 1892 and 1893. And here are some of the pictures of my pottery works. It's an oil lamp and wheels. Later in life, I took up knitting and donated my works to the Red Cross. I passed away on July 29, 1948, at the age of 107. And at that time, I was considered the oldest person in Cincinnati. And tomorrow, I do hope, when you return to Heritage Church, also known as the First Universalist Society of Cincinnati, that you take a look at my 134-year-old communion table, now the altar, and know that history is kept alive in my church.
in Cincinnati, and I lived my whole life here. My father was a working man, and my mother was from England. They met in New York City, and they later moved to the Midwest. My mother made sure we were all raised properly, and we finished high school. My parents were members of the First Universalist Church of Cincinnati And so my 3 sisters, my 2 brothers, and myself grew up in that congregation. As an adult, I helped in the church like most of the women did, maybe a little bit more. I served on committees. I took care of the literature table where we kept the pamphlets and the books for visitors to read. Of course, I cooked for our gatherings, and I really enjoyed being in the Women's Alliance at the church. When my parents passed on, the church was really my home. I lived simply. I never married. I worked as a seamstress and a dressmaker, a craft I truly love. I never owned a home. I just boarded or rented places. And well, I stayed active in the church until I died, over 50 years ago, in 1961 at the age of 85. I'm buried with everyone else in the family plot in Spring Grove Cemetery. But I guess I'm really supposed to talk about what happened after that. You see, it was my nature to be thrifty. And I saved and I invested what I could in local businesses. When I wrote out my will, not having any children of my own, I left what money I had to my Aunt Anna, 2 nieces, Viola and Hazel, and a nephew, Ralph, who had all been good to me. I had some stock in the Kroger Grocery Company that I left to the Girls Friendly Society, which provided shelter and help for young unmarried women, like I had been once. I also had about 200 shares of stock in that soap company in Ireland, Providence. I gave half of that to the church and half to the Women's Alliance. And that changed to what you call today the Clara Barton Sisterhood. Now that soap company was doing well when I bought the stock, but now I understand that it grew and split, and the stock went higher and higher over those years, beyond anything I could have imagined. And when the Universalist Convocation, now in the UU Association, decided to build their church in Newtown, my little gift paid for the land and eventually paid off the mortgage for the whole building. Wow. So I have a little legacy, and it seemed to make a lot of people happy.
Good evening. Good evening. I am the Reverend Robert Cummins. You may have heard my name. Notwithstanding my many travels and national and international posts, my roots also are right here in Southern Ohio. I was born in Sydney, Ohio in 1897. I received a Bachelor of Arts from Miami University in 1919. And a Master of Arts from the University of Cincinnati in 1921. After obtaining my bachelor's degree, I began my career as a teacher at a Presbyterian institute in Bangkok, Thailand. I served there for 2 years, but decided to leave the Presbyterian faith to join the Universalist faith, which was big enough to allow me the freedom of conscience and intellect I seemed by nature to demand. I returned to the United States in the early 1920s, came back to my home in southwest Ohio, and served pastors in Milford, Newtown, and Montgomery, Ohio, before settling in Cincinnati